Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and this is the first episode in which I will be sharing my July 2019 trip to the UK, in which I spent 2 days in London and 2 weeks traveling around Scotland, visiting distilleries. So I am not a big fan of flying. I don't like the uncomfortableness of being stuck in a chair, and I have a slight fear of flying. But I decided that I was not going to allow that to keep me from exploring the world of whiskey and meeting people around the world at whiskey events. So I'm really into studying whiskey, but I'm also a whiskey explorer. So in this series, what I really want to do is really focus on sort of reliving my trip to England and to Scotland and sharing it with you, and hopefully encourage you, if you haven't already, to take a trip to Scotland and visit the distilleries, because it really is a magical place. Now, I don't like flying. I don't like spending 10 and a half hours on a plane. You can watch movies and stuff like that, but one of the problems is I leave here from San Francisco Airport around 8 o'clock at night, and I arrived there about 2:30 in the afternoon. And because I'm sort of not comfortable flying, I don't sleep well. So my first day in England tends to be pretty rough, because when I arrive there at 2:30 in the afternoon, it's about 4 a.m. or so here in California, and I haven't slept at all. But on my first day there, I planned a trip to Bimber Distillery. So one of the things I did that I thought was really smart in this trip is I got a hotel really close to the airport, and that's really close to the train station, so I could easily in 5 minutes get to the train and then take it to really close to Bimber Distillery. It's about an hour subway train trip to the Piccadilly line to get close to Bimber Distillery, and then had about a mile or two to walk from the train station to Bimber Distillery. Now, when you go into that neighborhood, it's kind of a rough neighborhood. It's very urban. It's very industrial. It's not like beautiful Scotland there, but they are doing some really fantastic stuff there, and they came recommended by Jason Whiskey Wise. So when I arrived, I realized it really is a micro distillery. The founders are actually from Poland, and they are probably, I would say, on the frontier of producing London or England single malts. London in particular, is really well known for gin. In fact, there's a particular style of gin called the London gin. So this is a distillery to keep an eye out for. Now, I have here a sampler that I brought back from the distillery after I did a tour of the distillery. So it's a really cool place because it is, a micro distillery. They didn't have their first release available, so I brought back with me a sampler case. But since then, I was in September 2019, they had their first release, which I'm sure by now is completely sold out. Because one of the things about this distillery is that I particularly noticed in interacting with them is they are craftsmanship. They are paying attention to the details. This is definitely a distillery that's about quality, not quantity. And if England, particularly London, is going to have a future in the single malt market or in producing whiskeys, I think Bimber Distillery is going to be sort of on the frontier. They're going to be known as sort of the leaders, the frontiersmen in the England or London single malt industry. So I brought back here with a sampler. So we got to taste a bunch of whiskeys, new makes, and whiskeys while I was there. And so I brought back a sampler with me. So I'm going to share those with you. So there's 6 samples here, and the first 2 I have are new makes. I'm not going to review the new makes. The first one is a peated new make, and the second one is just the regular new make. So I like trying new makes and to compare them with their completed product. You can't make a good whiskey from a bad new make, right? Now, tasting a new make isn't necessarily going to tell you that it's going to be good on the finished end, because it's got a lot of time and aging to do. It's going to depend on casks and other factors, but it does give you an indication of the craftsmanship and quality of what the distiller is producing. So the first one we have here that I do want to review is an ex-bourbon cask, 3 years old, bottled at 51.27% alcohol by volume. The second one is a virgin oak. This is also 3 years old. This is bottled at 53.7% alcohol by volume. And I'm pouring some samples first so I can let them air a little bit as I talk about them. And I'm not going to consume all of them. There is 5 CLs in there, so there's plenty in there for a few drams. The third one I'm trying is the ex-sherry 3-year-old at 57.9% alcohol by volume. So these are some real high ABV. These are all cask strength. And while I was at the distillery, I got to taste a very, 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 very special whiskey that's sort of like, it was one cask, and it was a really, really small cask, and it was sort of the special whiskey of the distiller, sort of his special bottling that was not part of, going to be the part of the main line there. But it was absolutely superb. And when you can try, say, a reserve or a really, really special bottle that a distiller produces, it really shows you the potential of what they can do. This fourth one is a recharred, and it's a 3-year-old. It doesn't say recharred what. Recharred bourbon, I'm guessing. That's not a sherry, but it's a recharred bourbon cask. And this is bottled at 57.9% alcohol by volume. Now the labels are handwritten. Some of the 7s, where it says 57, where it says 57, could be 51. Some people draw 1 as a straight line. Some put that little thing on it. So looking at it, I'm thinking it might be actually 51.9. I'm trying to read his handwriting. It's not a bad handwriting. It's just people stylistically have different ways of doing a 1. And usually if it's a 7, they'll sometimes put a sideways line. But I don't know. So it's either 57 or it's at 51%. So the first one, again, is the ex-bourbon 3-year-old. Could be 51 or could be 57. I'm probably going to guess it's probably 51.2%. I'm guessing they just do a 1 with an extra big arc on it. I'm guessing on that. Wow. Now it's only 3 years old, so these are young. So, you know, you got to take that into context. But I think in terms of flavor, when you have a real young whiskey, tendencies to tend to get more green notes, and there's sort of a, you know, could be like a wood shop woodiness to them that's potential. So to sort of counteract that or counterbalance or make up for it in flavor, a lot of times what they'll do is then keep the ABV real high. But the idea of this is really just to get a sense of what their potential is and what they could do in the future. Obviously, hopefully over the next few years, they'll have more aged whiskeys. But I'm going to say, super small producer. I'm sure their first release is probably already gone. If not, I tried to get a bottle, but they don't ship. So if you happen to be in the area, if you happen to be near London, I would highly, highly recommend checking them out. Call them, see if you can get a bottle. I tried to arrange getting a bottle and then get someone to ship it for me, but it didn't work out. First of all, it doesn't smell really, really youthful, but I can definitely pick up the bourbon cask. There is that sense, that echo that says, hello, I was in a bourbon cask. There's that echo of the bourbon in there. I get some apple. The maltiness is definitely there. I do get lighter caramels. Am I picking up any greenness? Am I picking up any youthfulness that's more typical of a younger age whiskey? No, but the maltiness is really, really popping there. There's sort of that dusty character to it. Now the greenness is sort of kicking around. There is a little bit of that greenness in there. It's almost like a green apple. It's pretty intense. I get a little of that tingling character to it, so I don't want to stick my nose too far into it. A little bit of white pepper. Caramels. There's like maybe a little toffee kind of character going on there. Let's try it on the palate. Yeah, it tastes really, really young on the palate. And yet it still does have some really, really good development to it. Really heavy maltiness there. There's a lot of cereal notes in there. Lighter caramels, apple, now I'm getting some vanilla, particularly on the back end. The vanilla comes around on the back end. A little bit of spice, perhaps a little bit of white pepper. But I would say for a 3-year-old, it's actually doing really, 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 really well. But it's sort of like 3/4 into the palate. So you have the mid palate, and then you have the finish, the back end. Well, it's between the mid palate and the back end is where I'm just getting hello, just a second, hello, and then it goes away. That green note, that youthfulness, it just pops in there just for a second to say, yeah, I'm a young guy, and then it moves on. All right, let's try the next one. So the next one is the virgin oak, which means we're virgin oak. So we're probably looking at some really, really intense oak character. It's also 3 years old, and again, 53. It's either 0.7 or 0.1. It's a matter of reading the person's handwriting. Again, this is a 5 CL. Ooh, really different. Yeah, the oak is really there. The vanilla is there. Cinnamon, baking spices. Sort of a baked bread character to it. Again, I'm not getting a youthfulness, although it might pop in later. Lighter caramels. But I get more apple, a breadiness, maltiness. It's those cereal notes. On the palate. On the back end, I actually get sort of a lighter chocolate note, which I was not expecting. Wow, that's really, really nice. Some caramels. Almost like a butterscotch. Vanilla. Cinnamon. I like this virgin better than I do the ex-bourbon. And here's the reason why. I think a virgin oak, you got the youthfulness of the spirit, right? If you use an ex-bourbon, you use something that's charred, but you're using something that's already been used and already extracted some character to it and making the bourbon. So in order to get more extraction out of it, you're going to need more time, right, to get more out of the barrel. So an ex-bourbon that's youthful, you're kind of cutting it short there, right? You need more time. Now, but a virgin oak, it's almost like making a bourbon. You can't call it a bourbon because it's not from the United States, and it's malted. It's malt. It's not corn whiskey, and it's not made from corn in the mash. But that oak, the vanilla, the caramels, the cinnamon, the baking spices is sort of making up for the youthfulness of the spirit. Or making up, or sort of masking it. So the youthfulness of the spirit, so I'm not getting any green notes, ex-bourbon cask. And the characteristics of the virgin oak is intense enough to sort of make up for the youthfulness of it. And I think if someone was a bourbon lover, they would like this. It doesn't have the corn notes of a bourbon, but it has all the cask notes of a bourbon, but with perhaps not as much intensity that you would get from a heavily charred oak. Really, really nice. The next one is the X-Sherry, 3 years old. Could be 51.9 or could be 57.9, because just the way they do the one number. I'm going to go guess it's 51, but it could be 57. Might be able to tell on the palate. And this is X-Sherry. Color-wise, these all look pretty similar. This one, though, is a little bit darker. Wow, okay. Yeah, huge difference. So now you're getting what you expect from a sherry. Although not as intense as, say, like a Glendronach or Macallan or Abelard, some more heavily sherried cask, but it is there. You get in those dried fruit notes, but not quite the black fruit notes like fig, dates, and raisins, but I do get, it's more like sultanas, some dried stone fruits, vanilla, cinnamon, the maltiness is there. All of these have seemed super malty. Cinnamon and spice. This also seems to have more spice than the others. On the palate. This one's making me think. That is really different. So when you think, wow, and now I'm getting something really different. Huge delay, and there's something else that comes along in the follow through. Let's try another one. Now, usually when I do a whiskey review, I've opened the bottle, I've gotten it past the shoulder, it has had time to breathe. But since these are all small samples, I've not done that. I could have poured them all, let them sit in the glass for a while, and done it that way, but whatever. The evolution on this one is really something. It starts with lighter colored dried fruit notes. So it's not like fig, dates, raisins, those sort of dark dried fruit notes. It's more like dried apricot, dried pear, dried peach. And then what kicks in, and it seems to come out, wow, it's like creme brulee. A little bit of toasted marshmallow. I was not expecting that from something that's supposed to be, ex-sherry cask. Vanilla, cinnamon. This one, thus far, I would say, it's not a typical characteristics of an ex-sherry cask, but which is kind of odd, because usually ex-sherry casks, I get those darker dried fruit notes, but the evolution and the change on this one is really, really quite remarkable. All right, so the final one, but it just says recharred. Recharred bourbon? Who knows? Is it a farmer whiskey cask that was recharred? It doesn't say. So I'm just going to have to go off the palate. So it's a recharred cask. Just in this bottle, it looks slightly darker than the other ones. I looked into the notes online, and these are casks that another distillery had bought as virgin oak and filled them without first having charred them. Oops. Bimber took the casks, charred them, and then filled them up with spirit, hence recharred, though really these are only charred once since the previous owner forgot to char them. So thus far, I've had some really young whiskeys, say particularly from California, and that are probably in the same age, and not one of them is as impressive as any of these. Climate-wise, how different is London, say, from California? Do they get hotter summers? Is it actually cooler there? Probably, on average, cooler there. They definitely get a lot more rain there. So, in aging-wise, I don't think there's going to be a dramatic difference between California and London, we get more sunshine. We may even get hotter summers and more heat than that they get. So it's not like one region has a major advantage in terms of aging the whiskeys. This one I get that marshmallow note. I get that there's an almond note or almond note, as my dad would say. There's that creme brulee note. There's some little bit of perhaps a little toffee. There's that baked bread note, vanilla. The maltiness is there. I would say out of all these, the maltiness really stands out in comparison to what I typically experience in whiskeys. On the palate, This one on the nose is not as impressive as the others. The one that I actually found the most impressive on the nose that I really liked was the Virgin cask, and actually on the palate. But this one tastes a little older. I think it has a little more. It has deeper fruit notes. It has more complexity to it. I'm not getting it. It doesn't have a super intense character to it in terms of the fruit, but it also doesn't have the youthfulness as the first one I had, the ex-bourbon cask. Caramelized apples, dried yellow fruits, apricots, peach, apple. There is a little bit of woodiness there. There's vanilla. There's cinnamon. There is that almost like a little bit of a toasted marshmallow character in there. And then intense maltiness. And that's a real long finish. Alrighty. So, in a video like this, obviously, none of these, you can't go out and buy them. Even their new release that they had in September, you can't run out and buy it unless you happen to be in London or you can hunt one down somewhere. So what's the point and advantage of a video like this and having someone talking about this? If you're really into whiskeys, this is my main takeaway. One, if you go to England, you want to visit the distillery. If you go to London, highly recommend visiting this distillery. Visit Bimber Distillery. Secondly, keep your eyes and ears out. Keep your ears out. Keep your eyes open and your ears open for Bimber Distillery. I'm willing to put money on it. You're going to see the Whiskey Advocate or some other whiskey journalism rave about Bimber Distillery. The Bimber Distillery is going to come on the radar and you're going to hear about them. And consequently, we know what that happens, particularly when it's a small producer. Prices are going to go up. So they are trying to avoid, I know they're trying to avoid flippers. They want people to drink the whiskeys, not flip them and get into all that nonsense. But I want to highly recommend, even though the neighborhood isn't the best, it's not the most scenic neighborhood. If you just search Bimber Distillery, get the address, go on Google Earth, right? On Google Earth, you can not only get a sky view of the area, but you can go street level in Google Earth and look around on Google Earth. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's definitely in an urban area, an industrial area of London. And me personally, I probably wouldn't want to walk around there at night. In the area, there's like car repair shops and auto shops and businesses. It's right. It's not like going out to the beautiful rolling hills of the Highlands. It's not like that at all. So it's a very different neighborhood. But highly, highly, highly recommend checking out Bimber Distillery. Alrighty. So I spent 2 days in England. This was my first stop. On my second day in England, before I headed up to Glasgow, I went to the Whiskey Exchange. I did some of the touristy thing near Buckingham Palace. Then I went to Milroy's in Soho in England and met up with Ethan from Top Whiskies and had an absolutely fantastic time hanging out with him. We had a number of whiskeys at Milroy's, and that is going to be my next video. So I hope you enjoy this series, and I hope if you have the opportunity, to get out there, to go to England and visit this distillery, to check out Milroy's, to go to Scotland and visit distilleries. I highly, highly, highly recommend it, because there's nothing better than experiencing these whiskeys and where they're from and meeting the people who produce them. Alrighty, that's it for this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe. If you want to be notified when I go live or when I post a new video, hit the bell and share this with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and other social networking channels. And until next time, cheers. Hey, if you like my review, be sure to check out these other whiskey videos.